The billionaire's son sees a poor mother with twin girls painting a crumbling house on Christmas Eve, but what he asks his dad is unbelievable. Christmas Eve had arrived with a sharp, biting cold. Alexander Vance was driving his SUV through the snow-covered streets, the heater turned up high. In the back seat, Ethan slept with his cheek pressed against the fogged-up window. They had just left his grandmother's urgent care clinic. The appointment took longer than expected. A crowded waiting room, a delayed doctor, all that happens before the holidays. Traffic on the main roads was impossible. Alexander looked at the GPS. The alternative route flashed. A shortcut through an unfamiliar neighborhood. It would save 20 minutes. "Why not?" he muttered, turning the wheel. The streets changed slowly. Large houses gave way to simpler constructions, crooked fences, and yards with dirty snow. Some windows had Christmas lights, others were dark. Alexander wasn't judgmental. He knew this kind of neighborhood well. Ethan woke up, yawning. "Are we there yet, Dad?" "Almost, champ. Just taking a different way." The boy looked out the window. Suddenly he pointed. "Dad, look!" Alexander slowed down. On the left side, a woman was painting the facade of an old house. She wore a coat that was too thin and held a paintbrush with a trembling hand. Beside her, two little girls, blonde with bright eyes, were trying to help with tiny brushes. The paint ran down the wall. The cold wouldn't let it dry, but they kept trying. Alexander stopped the car. "Dad, they're trying to paint, but it's dripping." "I see, son." Alexander watched. The woman carefully applied the brush, trying to cover cracks. The girls laughed, even with their hands freezing. One of them looked up. "Mommy, will it look nice for Christmas?" The woman smiled, but Alexander saw the exhaustion. "It will, my darlings." Ethan unbuckled his seatbelt. "Dad, help them, please." Alexander looked at his son, those eyes pleading with sincerity. "All right, let's go." The two got out. The cold hit hard. Alexander pulled Ethan's hat down and walked up to the woman. "Jaya, excuse me." She turned, startled. Up close, Alexander noticed her tired eyes, paint stains on her hands, and hair tied up haphazardly. "Yes. Sorry to interrupt. The paint isn't sticking because of the cold." She looked at the wall and sighed. "I know, but I wanted it to look nice for Christmas." There was something broken in her voice. "Do you need help?" Ethan asked. The girls looked at Ethan, identical twins, light blonde hair, bright blue eyes, rosy cheeks. "Hi," one said timidly. "Hi," Ethan replied, smiling. The woman wiped her hands on her apron. "Look, I appreciate it, but I don't want to trouble you. It's Christmas Eve." "Exactly why." Alexander put his hands in his pockets. "No one should spend Christmas like this." She was speechless, looking at her daughters. "I can't pay you." "I didn't ask for payment." Heavy silence. She was trying to figure out if this was real. "Are you a painter?" "I own a construction company, building and renovations." Alexander shrugged. "I can call 2 of my guys. If they can make it, we'll finish this today." The twins exchanged hopeful glances. The woman gripped the paintbrush, conflicted. I don't know what to say." "Say yes." She took a deep breath. "All right, yes, thank you." "What's your name?" "Sarah. Sarah Olson. These are Mia and Chloe." "Alexander Vance." "This is Ethan." The children were already looking at each other like friends. Alexander made 2 calls. 10 minutes later, a van pulled up. 2 men got out with cans of paint, tarps, ladders, and tools. "Boss, I thought you were taking the day off," one joked. "Change of plans, Mike." Mike and Kevin assessed the house and got to work. Sarah stood to the side, processing everything. Alexander walked over. "They'll need about 3 hours." 3 hours? Her eyes widened. "It won't cost a thing." Sarah couldn't reply. While they worked, the children played in the snow. Ethan showed Mia and Chloe how to make snowballs. "Like this, squeeze it tight." The girls tried, giggling when they fell apart. Soon they were in a snowball fight, running, falling, and getting back up with laughter. Sarah watched from the porch. A genuine smile appeared. Alexander walked up the steps and stood beside her. "They are beautiful." "Thank you," Sarah smiled. They're my whole world. How old? 5. They just had their birthday. Ethan is 5 too. They stood in silence watching the children. Laughter filled the air. Why did you do this? Sarah asked. Alexander took a moment to answer. Because I've been in tough spots before, and because my son asked me to. She looked at him. You're a good mom, I can tell. Sarah looked away, emotional. I try to be. The hours passed quickly. Mike and Kevin worked efficiently. The facade was sanded, prepped, and painted. The cracks covered, windows cleaned, the small yard tidied. When they finished, it was already getting dark. Sarah stood on the sidewalk looking. Her hands covered her mouth. The twins ran closer. Mommy, look. It's pretty. It's gorgeous, Sarah whispered. Alexander paid his employees. They drove off smiling. Alexander looked at his watch. Well, I guess we should go. Wait, Sarah stepped closer. I don't know how to thank you. This means so much. You don't need to. I do. She took a deep breath. Do you have plans for tonight? Alexander blinked. Plans? Christmas dinner. It won't be anything fancy, but I'd like you to come. The twins jumped up and down. Please, Mr. Alexander. Ethan can come. Ethan looked at his dad, pleading. Alexander hesitated for a second. All right, we'll be back in a few hours. The girls cheered. Sarah smiled. Perfect. When they returned, they brought a pie and wine. Sarah opened the door wearing a stained apron. The smell of home cooking filled the entryway. Come in, it's cold. The house was simple but clean. A small tree sparkled in the corner. Handmade ornaments decorated the walls. The table was set. Mismatched plates, simple glasses, everything arranged with care. Dinner was delicious. Roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, salad, warm bread. Simple but made with dedication. The children ate quickly to play. Sarah let the 3 of them go, and they were soon on the rug-building towers. Alexander helped clear the plates. The food was great. Thank you. They washed dishes side by side. Sarah washed. Alexander dried. Did you take good care of him? Sarah commented. He's very polite. I try to be. Alexander put away a plate. It's not easy on your own. Are you a widower? Divorced. It's been 3 years. And you? Never married. Their father left before they were born. Alexander nodded. 2 single parents doing their best. Sarah smiled. Yes, they returned to the living room. The children were coloring now. Ethan lent his crayons to Mia and Chloe. Alexander sat on the sofa, Sarah in the armchair. Conversation flowed easily. He talked about his construction company, about building. She talked about the bakery, the early mornings, the exhaustion, but she spoke without self-pity, just facts. Alexander admired that. Sarah noticed how he listened. No rush, no phone, paying attention. The hours flew by. Ethan yawned. Someone's getting sleepy, Alexander commented. Ethan protested, but yawned again. Mia and Chloe were rubbing their eyes too. It's been a long day, Sarah said, standing up. Alexander picked Ethan up. The boy rested his head, falling asleep. Thank you for the evening, it was nice. For me too. They stood near the door. Sarah hugged her daughters. Alexander held Ethan. Silence that spoke more than words. Dad, Ethan mumbled, can we see them again? Mia spoke quickly. Please, Mommy, Chloe finished. It was so much fun. Sarah and Alexander looked at each other. They both smiled. Of course, Sarah said softly. Always, Alexander agreed. The children smiled, almost asleep. Alexander stepped out into the cold night, Ethan in his arms. Before getting into the SUV, he looked back. Sarah stood at the door, waving, the twins beside her like little blonde angels. He waved back. And for the first time in a long time, Alexander felt something different, something warm, something like hope. He got into the car and drove off with a slight smile. Sarah closed the door, leaned against it, and sighed. The twins hugged her. He's nice, Mommy. Very nice, Sarah smiled. Yes, he is. And for the first time in a long time, she went to sleep feeling that maybe things could get better. In the SUV, a half-awake Ethan asked, "Dad, are they going to be our friends?" Alexander looked in the rearview mirror. "I think so. I like them and Sarah." Alexander smiled. "I do too." Ethan closed his eyes. "Can we go back tomorrow?" "We'll see. Go to sleep." But Alexander knew they would be back, maybe not tomorrow, but soon, because something had happened that night. Something small but important. A meeting that seemed like an accident. A GPS choosing a different route. A woman painting in the cold wool, a boy asking for help. But maybe it wasn't an accident. Maybe it was fate correcting the path of two families who needed something new. Alexander parked in front of his own house, large, beautiful, but always too empty. He carried Ethan inside, put him in bed without changing his clothes, just taking off his shoes. He tucked the boy in and stood watching him. "You have a good heart, son." He kissed his forehead and left. In his room, he lay down but didn't fall asleep immediately. He stared at the ceiling, thinking about Sarah trying to paint alone, about the twins laughing in the snow, about the way Sarah looked at her daughters, with a love that hurt, about the conversation in the kitchen, simple but true. Alexander wasn't looking for anyone. He had accepted it would just be him and Ethan, and he was fine with it. But maybe life had other plans. He turned over and closed his eyes, and for the first time in years, he fell asleep thinking about someone other than his son. On the other side of town, Sarah was also awake. The twins slept cuddled together, looking like angels. She sat on the edge of the bed and stroked their blonde hair. "It'll be okay, my loves." And this time, when she made that promise, she felt that maybe it was true. Because a stranger had stopped on a cold eve. He had helped without asking for anything. He had looked without judgment. He had seen her daughters as precious, not as a burden. Sarah lay down beside the girls and closed her eyes, and smiled in the dark. Because sometimes, when we least expect it, the world remembers that there are still good people, that it's worth believing, that there can be a Christmas and new beginnings. The snow continued to fall outside, covering everything with a white mantle. And two families, who hours before were complete strangers, now carried something different in their hearts. A spark, a possibility, a future none of them had planned, but that fate seemed to be writing slowly. Alexander tossed in bed, pulled up the blanket and finally relaxed. Tomorrow was Christmas. And for the first time in 3 years, he didn't just feel the emptiness of the big apartment. He felt something more, something like anticipation. Sarah also finally fell asleep, the girls warm on either side. The house was quiet, but it was no longer the heavy silence from before. It was a different kind of quiet, full of promises, full of possibilities. Outside, the snow covered the house's freshly painted facade, and in the morning, when the sun rose, that house would shine, beautiful, new, ready for a new beginning, just like the two families who met by chance on that cold Christmas Eve. Two families who didn't know it yet, but who were about to discover that sometimes life surprises you. That sometimes love arrives when we least expect it, and that sometimes a simple detour can change everything. Forever. The alarm clock rang at 4 in the morning. Sarah opened her eyes in the dark, still tired from the night before. Her body ached. It always did. But there was no time to rest. She got up slowly so as not to wake the twins, who were sleeping cuddled in the bed beside her. Mia had her arm thrown over Chloe, their blonde hair spread out on the pillow. Sarah smiled at the sight of them. They were the reason for everything. In the bathroom, she washed her face with cold water. The heater had broken down again during the night. She thumped it twice, tried to adjust it, but nothing. She would have to wait a little longer to fix it. "One more thing on the list," she muttered. She put on her bakery uniform, black pants, white shirt, apron that was already frayed at the edges. She tied her hair back, put on her old shoes. Before leaving, she went to the girls' room. She kissed each of their foreheads, very slowly. "Mommy loves you." She closed the door carefully and left for the cold morning. The bakery was a 20-minute bus ride away. Sarah arrived at 5 o'clock sharp, as always. "Morning, Sarah." The owner greeted her without looking up, already kneading dough. Morning, Mrs. Peterson. Work began immediately. Organizing the bread coming out of the oven, preparing the display case, cleaning the tables, serving customers, everything fast, without stopping. The hours passed at a frantic pace. Customers came and went. The smell of fresh bread filled the air, but Sarah barely noticed. She was too used to it. At lunchtime, she ate what was left over from the day before. Bread with butter and black coffee. There was no time for more. "Sarah, clean table 3, Mrs. Peterson shouted from the kitchen. "Coming." When she finally finished her shift, it was already 2 in the afternoon, 10 hours of work. Her feet throbbed, her back ached. At the register, Mrs. Peterson handed her the weekly pay envelope. "Thank you," Sarah said, putting it away without counting. She knew exactly how much was in there, always the same amount. Never enough, but it was what she could get. On the bus ride home, she leaned her head against the window and closed her eyes. Just a few minutes of rest before getting home and starting all over again. The twins were at the neighbor's house, Mrs. Rodriguez, who looked after them while Sarah worked. She went to get them, knocking on the door next door. "Mommy!" Mia and Chloe ran to hug her. "Hi, my beauties!" Sarah crouched down to hug them properly, even with her body aching. "Were you good girls?" "They were great, as always," Mrs. Rodriguez said, smiling. "They've already had lunch. Thank you." "I don't know what I'd do without you." "Don't mention it, dear. It's my pleasure." The 3 returned home. As soon as she opened the door, Sarah felt the cold. The heater was still broken. "Mommy, it's freezing," Chloe complained, rubbing her arms. "I know, love. I'll turn on the heater." But when she tried, the old appliance made a strange noise and let out a faint puff of warm air. It wasn't enough to heat the whole house. Sarah sighed. "One more problem. Put on your jackets for now. It'll get better." While the girls played in the living room, Sarah went to check the house. She did this every week, trying to keep everything under control. The leak on the kitchen wall had gotten worse. The damp patch was larger, climbing up to the ceiling. Sarah touched it. It was wet. "It can't be," she murmured. She went to the bedroom. The wooden floor creaked more near the window. She stepped on it and the board groaned, sinking slightly. The window had a crack on the side. The cold wind came through there, whistling softly. Sarah had tried to seal it with tape, but it hadn't helped much. In the bathroom, the small leak in the ceiling dripped into a bucket. Plink, plink, plink. A constant sound that irritated her, but which she had learned to ignore. Sarah leaned against the sink and took a deep breath. It was too much to fix, and the money never stretched far enough. She went back to the kitchen and opened the cupboard. She counted what she had: rice, beans, pasta, a few cans, enough for the week if she budgeted carefully. She opened her purse and took out the pay envelope. She separated the bills on the table. Rent, electricity, water, gas. She did the math in her head. Very little would be left for food. "As always," she whispered, but she had no choice. She paid the bills mentally, put the money in the correct sections inside her purse. In the living room, Mia and Chloe were playing with old dolls, making different voices and laughing. Sarah paused at the door just to watch them. Even with everything difficult, even with the house falling apart, they were happy, or at least they seemed to be. "Mommy, come play," Mia called out. "I'll be there, love. I'm just going to make dinner first." In the kitchen, she prepared something simple: pasta with tomato sauce and a fried egg. Nothing special, but the girls ate it smiling. "It's yummy, Mommy," Chloe said. "That's good, my love." After dinner, they played a little in the living room. Sarah tried to forget the tiredness, the cold, the problems. She just wanted to see the girls happy. At 8, she bathed them quickly, because the water wasn't very hot. She put them in thick pajamas and added extra blankets. "Can we sleep with you tonight, Mommy?" Mia asked. "It's too cold." "Of course you can." The 3 snuggled up in bed. Sarah hugged her daughters, trying to warm them with her own body. "Mommy loves you so much." "We love you too," the 2 responded together. Within minutes, the twins were fast asleep. Sarah stayed awake a little longer, staring at the dark ceiling. The leak dripped in the bathroom. The wind whistled through the window crack. The house groaned softly, old and tired like her. But tomorrow would be another day, and she would keep trying, always trying. 2 days later, Alexander drove through the neighborhood. He hadn't planned to go that way. He was coming back from a work site when he decided to make the detour. He wanted to see how the house looked, the facade they had painted on Christmas Eve. When he turned onto the street, he saw that the paint still looked nice, light cream shining under the weak afternoon sun, but something wasn't right. Alexander stopped his SUV out front and got out. He looked at the house with a builder's eye, eyes trained to see beyond the surface. The facade was impeccable, but the windows... He moved closer. He noticed the crack in one of the side windows. He noticed how the frame was crooked, too old. He walked around the side of the house, where the fence was partially open. From there, he saw more. The roof had missing shingles in some spots. The gutter was clogged. There were signs of water damage on the side wall, dark patches climbing up. Alexander frowned. The beautiful paint was just a thin layer over a fragile structure. He walked back to the front of the house and stood there, thinking. Sarah had done what she could with what she had. She had tried to make the house nice for Christmas, but beneath that temporary beauty, there were serious problems. Problems that a single mother, earning little, couldn't possibly solve. Alexander leaned against his SUV and crossed his arms, observing. The house needed much more than paint. It needed structural repairs. It needed someone who understood the issue and had the resources. He thought about Sarah coming home from work to that house. He thought about the twins playing inside, in the cold, with the weak heater and the growing leaks. He thought about how she had smiled on Christmas, proud of the painted facade, unaware that he now saw much beyond it. Alexander took a deep breath. It wasn't his problem. Technically, he had already helped with the paint. He had done his part. But as he got back into the SUV and started the engine, the image of that house wouldn't leave his mind. Beautiful on the outside, fragile on the inside. Exactly like Sarah's situation, doing her best to keep up appearances, to give her daughters a decent home, but battling problems bigger than she could face alone. Alexander drove back home. But something had changed. He had seen the truth, and he couldn't simply ignore it. 3 days after Christmas, Alexander parked his SUV in front of Sarah's house. Ethan was in the back seat, swinging his legs with anticipation. "Are we there, Dad?" "We are." Alexander looked at the packages on the passenger seat. He had thought a lot before buying them. He didn't want to seem intrusive or make Sarah feel bad. But they were just small gifts, nothing major. "Oh, let's go, champ." Ethan jumped out of the car carrying one of the packages. Alexander took the other two. They knocked on the door. They heard quick footsteps and laughter inside. Sarah opened it, surprised. "Alexander! Ethan!" "Hi!" Ethan waved excitedly. "Sorry for showing up unannounced," Alexander said. Ethan kept asking to see the girls and, "Well, we brought a few things." Sarah looked at the packages, unsure what to say. "You shouldn't have. I know, but we wanted to." Mia and Chloe appeared behind their mother, peering out curiously. "It's Ethan!" Mia shouted. "Hi, Ethan!" Chloe added. The two girls jumped up excitedly, and Sarah stepped aside to let them in. "Come in, please." It's cold. Inside the house, Alexander felt the low temperature. The heater made a faint noise in the corner, but clearly wasn't working right. He noticed it, but didn't comment. "We brought a few things for the girls," Alexander said, handing the packages to Sarah. Ethan had already sat on the floor with Mia and Chloe, telling them about a cartoon he'd watched. Sarah held the packages, visibly touched. "You really didn't need to do this. It's Christmas, a little late, but it still counts." She smiled and called her daughters over. "Girls, come see." Mia and Chloe ran over. Their eyes shone when they saw the wrapping. "For us?" Mia asked. "For you," Alexander confirmed. The twins tore open the packages quickly, ripping the colorful paper. In the first one, they found 2 cloth dolls, one in a blue dress, one in a pink dress, handmade, with yarn hair and embroidered eyes. "Look, Mommy, dolls." Chloe held hers tight against her chest. "They're beautiful," Mia said, stroking the yarn hair. In the second package, they found new gloves, small, soft and warm. A pink pair for Mia, a yellow one for Chloe. For when you play in the snow, Alexander explained, so your hands don't freeze. The girls immediately put on the gloves, testing them, opening and closing their fingers. So warm, Chloe said, amazed. Sarah stood watching her daughters. Her eyes were moist. Alexander, you shouldn't have spent money. It was nothing much. I just wanted them to have something special. Sarah discreetly wiped the corner of her eye. Thank you, seriously. Mommy, can we play outside? Mia asked, already standing with her doll in hand. It's too cold, love. But we have gloves now. Chloe showed off her hands. And I want to play in the snow too, Ethan added hopefully. Sarah looked at Alexander, who shrugged, smiling. If you put on thick coats. The three children cheered and ran to get their coats. Minutes later, they were in the small backyard. The snow covered everything with a soft white layer. Ethan led the games immediately. Let's make a giant snowman. Giant, Mia agreed. Bigger than us, Chloe added. The three started rolling snowballs, trying to make them grow. Ethan showed them how to squeeze them tightly so they wouldn't fall apart. The twins copied his movements, laughing when they got it wrong. Alexander and Sarah stood on the porch watching. Want some coffee? Sarah offered. I'd love some. She went inside and returned minutes later with 2 steaming mugs. She handed one to Alexander and leaned against the railing next to him. Thank you again for the gifts. They are radiant. I can see that. Alexander smiled, watching the girls rolling snow. Ethan's loving it too. He won't stop talking about them. The girls too. When is Ethan coming back? All the time. They stood in comfortable silence, drinking coffee and watching. The children shouted instructions to each other, completely engrossed. He's a good boy, Sarah commented. Ethan, very thoughtful. I try to teach him to be kind, to see other people. It's working. Sarah looked at him. It's not easy raising a child alone. You know that well. I do, she sighed. Sometimes it feels impossible. Work, bills, taking care of them, everything at once. Alexander wanted to ask about her work, about her situation, but didn't want to seem intrusive. Where do you work? At a bakery. I start at 5 in the morning. 5? Alexander blinked. That's early. It is. Sarah gave a tired smile. But it pays the bills, more or less. He noticed the more or less, but didn't comment. And the girls? Who looks after them? The neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, she's an angel. She watches them while I work. You're lucky to have someone like that. I am. I don't know what I'd do without her. Outside, the snowman was taking shape. It wasn't giant like the children wanted, but it was coming out nicely. Ethan placed small stones for the eyes. Mia found a twig for the nose. Chloe made a smile with bits of charcoal she found near the fence. It's beautiful, the three shouted together. Alexander and Sarah laughed. They have endless energy, Alexander commented. If I had half that energy, Sarah sighed. Did you work today? Yesterday. Today is my day off. Then you can rest a bit. Rest? Sarah laughed without humor. With 2 5-year-olds? Impossible. Alexander smiled. Just fair enough. They stood there, side by side, watching the children play. The weak afternoon sun lit up the snow, making everything sparkle. The children's laughter filled the air. You're a good man, Alexander, Sarah said suddenly, still looking ahead. He looked at her, surprised. You stopped to help a stranger. You painted the house. You brought gifts. Without asking for anything in return. It's nothing much. It is. Sarah turned to face him. It's a lot, for me and for the girls. Their eyes met. Alexander saw gratitude there, but also something more, something he couldn't name yet. I just wanted to help, he said softly. And you did. A lot. The moment stretched out, charged with something unspoken. Then Chloe shouted, Mr. Alexander, come see. The spell was broken. They both smiled and walked down the steps. The children had finished the snowman. It was crooked, with mismatched stones for eyes, but it had charm. "It's perfect," Alexander said. "It's the best snowman in the world," Ethan declared. "In the whole world," Mia agreed. Chloe hugged the snowman carefully. "Should we make another one?" "Another one," Ethan agreed immediately. And so they started again, rolling snowballs, laughing when they fell, getting up and trying once more. Sarah and Alexander returned to the porch. "They'll be out there until dark," Sarah commented. "Probably." "Want to stay for dinner?" "It won't be anything fancy, but—" Alexander hesitated for just a second. "I'd love to." Sarah smiled, a genuine smile that lit up her tired face. "Great." They stayed there for a while longer, talking about simple things, work, children, the harsh winter. Nothing deep, but comfortable. Alexander noticed how easy it was to talk to her. How he didn't have to fill silences or force conversation. It just flowed. And Sarah noticed how safe she felt next to him, how Alexander's presence had something comforting about it. It wasn't obvious or declared attraction. It was something more subtle. A connection forming slowly, brick by brick, like a solid construction. The children finally tired out. They came in with rosy cheeks and cold noses, but happy. "It was so much fun," Ethan said, taking off his coat. "Can we do it again?" Mia asked. "Whenever you want," Alexander replied, looking at Sarah, who nodded, smiling. Dinner was simple but delicious. Sarah made warm soup and toasted bread. The children ate quickly, still energized from the day. Afterward, they played in the living room while the adults cleaned the kitchen together. It was becoming natural, this dynamic between them, as if they had been doing it for years. When Alexander and Ethan left, it was already night. At the door, Sarah held his arm for a second. "Thank you for everything today. You don't need to thank me." "It was nice." "It was." Sarah smiled. "Very nice." Alexander got into the SUV with Ethan already half asleep. As he drove home, he thought about how simple but perfect the day had been, about how Sarah smiled differently when she was relaxed, about how the twins hugged their dolls like treasures, about how for the second time he felt that warmth in his chest. That feeling that something was changing, slowly, naturally, the way it was meant to be. A week later, Ethan walked into the kitchen where Alexander was making breakfast. "Dad, can we visit Mia and Chloe today?" Alexander looked at his son. Ethan had that hopeful expression that was impossible to deny. "You really like them, don't you?" "I do. They're nice." "And we can play in the snow again." Alexander smiled. "All right, we'll go after lunch." Ethan cheered, jumping up and down. In the afternoon, they parked in front of the house. The facade still looked nice, but Alexander couldn't stop thinking about the problems he had seen on the outside. Ethan jumped out of the car and ran to the door. Alexander followed slower, carrying a basic toolbox he had brought just in case. Sarah opened the door, surprised but smiling. "Hi, I wasn't expecting you today," Ethan insisted. Alexander explained. "I hope it's not a bad time." "No, not at all. Come in." "Ethan!" the twins shouted from the back of the house, running to hug him. The three children immediately disappeared into the bedroom, laughing and talking about what they were going to play. Sarah laughed. "They really like each other." "They do." Alexander looked around. From inside, he could see more details. The leak stain on the kitchen wall was visible from there. "Sarah, is it okay if I take a look at a few things?" She frowned. "A look at what?" "The house. I just want to check some things." Sarah hesitated, visibly uncomfortable. "Alexander, you don't have to—" "I know, but since I'm here—" She sighed, but agreed. "All right." Alexander started in the kitchen. The water damage on the wall was worse up close. The paint was peeling, the plaster damp and soft to the touch. It climbed up the corner to the ceiling. "That's coming from above," he murmured. "From the roof, probably." Sarah leaned against the sink, arms crossed. "I know, it gets worse when it rains." Alexander moved on to the living room. He tested the floor near the window. The wooden boards groaned and gave slightly under his weight. This floor is rotten. From prolonged water damage. He looked at the window. The crack on the side was clear now that he was close. He ran his finger over it. The cold wind came right through. That window needs new weather stripping. And probably a new frame. He went to the bathroom. The bucket under the leak was half full. Plink, plink, plink. The constant sound of dripping water. He looked up. The stain on the ceiling was large, dark. How long has this been dripping? A few months, Sarah admitted softly. I tried to fix it, but I couldn't reach properly. Alexander shook his head. He went back to the kitchen, opened the toolbox. What are you doing? Sarah asked. At least I'll patch the leak. I have some materials here. Alexander, you don't have to... I know, but I'm going to do it anyway. He worked quickly. He climbed onto a chair, applied sealant to the leaking area, reinforced it with electrical tape. It wasn't permanent, but it would hold for a while. There, that should stop the dripping for now. But it will need a more serious repair eventually. Sarah watched with gratitude mixed with embarrassment. Thank you. Alexander put away the tools and faced her. He chose his words carefully. Sarah, have you ever thought about renovating this house? She looked away immediately, her shoulders slumped. Thought about it, of course I have. Heavy silence. Then Sarah lowered her head and continued, voice soft. I wanted to, but I can't afford it. It's just me and them. Life is hard enough. Alexander saw the pain in those words. This house was my mother's, she continued, touching the wall affectionately. It's all I have, the only thing she left me. Her voice broke at the end. Alexander didn't know what to say. He wanted to offer help, but didn't want to offend her pride. Sarah, I know what you're thinking. She finally looked at him, eyes shining. That the house is falling apart, that it's not safe for the girls. I know all of that. That wasn't it. Yes, it was, and you're right. She quickly wiped her eyes. But I do what I can, Alexander. Every month is a new bill, a new problem. The money barely covers food. How am I supposed to pay for a renovation? Alexander felt something tighten in his chest. Her frustration was palpable. I'm sorry. I didn't want to make you uncomfortable. It's not you. Sarah sighed tiredly. It's the situation. Always the situation. From the bedroom, they heard the children's laughter, a reminder that there was still joy there, despite everything. They deserve better, Sarah whispered. They deserve a safe, warm house, without leaks and water damage. You're doing the best you can, am I? Sometimes it doesn't feel like enough. Alexander took a step forward, hesitated, but placed his hand on her shoulder in a comforting gesture. You're an incredible mother. They know that. Sarah looked at him, and something passed between them. Gratitude, yes, but also a deeper connection. Thank you, she said softly. For understanding. Alexander nodded and stepped back. I'm going to call 2 of my employees, just to come take a look, do an assessment, no commitment. Alexander, just an assessment, to know exactly what needs to be done. It doesn't cost anything. Sarah hesitated, but finally agreed. All right, but just an assessment. Just an assessment, he promised. 2 days later, Mike and Kevin arrived with clipboards and measuring tools. Sarah received them nervously. Alexander was with her, which helped calm her down. You're just looking, right? Yes, Mom, Mike assured her. Just seeing what's needed. They spent an hour examining everything. They measured walls, tested floors, climbed onto the roof, checked plumbing. Sarah stayed in the kitchen with Alexander, waiting anxiously. It's going to be expensive, isn't it? Let's wait for what they say. When they finished, Mike came back looking serious. It's more than it looks, boss. Serious water damage coming from the roof, rotted floor in 2 rooms, the heater's too old and needs replacing, windows need fixing. Small plumbing leaks in several spots. Alexander listened to everything, processing, but nothing seriously structural. The house isn't going to collapse? No, the structure is sound, but if you leave it longer, it could get much worse. How long would the work take? With a full crew, about 10 days, maybe 2 weeks. Alexander thanked them and sent them off. He was left alone with Sarah in the living room. She was pale. "It's worse than I thought. It's fixable," Alexander said firmly. "Nothing that can't be resolved." "With what money, Alexander?" Her voice was tired, hopeless. He didn't have an answer for that yet. But looking at Sarah, at the exhaustion on her face, at the determination still present in her eyes, at the silent strength of that woman who fought alone every day, Alexander knew he couldn't just walk away. Not this time. "We'll find a way," he said softly. Sarah looked at him with a mixture of hope and disbelief. "You barely know me." "Why do you care so much?" Alexander thought about the question. He thought about all the practical reasons he could give. But the truth was simpler and more complicated at the same time. "Because I see you fighting. I see you giving everything for your daughters, and He hesitated. "I want to help, if you'll let me." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything right now. Just think about it, okay?" She nodded, unable to speak. From the bedroom, the children called out to show them something they had built with blocks. Sarah quickly wiped her eyes and smiled. "Let's go see what they made." But as they walked toward the bedroom, Alexander felt that something had shifted between them. The connection had deepened. It was no longer just acquaintances helping each other. It was something more, something neither of them was ready to name yet. But that was growing, slowly and inevitably, like water damage climbing the wall, like roots deepening in the earth. Silent but constant, real. The weather forecast had warned about the storm, but no one expected it to be so fierce. It started on Friday afternoon. Ethan had gone to play with Mia and Chloe after school, something that had become a routine in recent weeks. Alexander dropped the boy off around 3, planning to pick him up at 6. "It's no problem," Sarah had said at the door. "They'll have fun." And they did. The 3 children built a cushioned fort in the living room, played hide and seek, and drew castles and dragons. But at 5 in the afternoon, the snow began to fall. First slowly, light flakes dancing in the air, then faster. And then it turned into a dense white curtain. Sarah looked out the window, frowning. "It's snowing hard." The children ran to look, excited. "Look at all that snow," Mia shouted. "Should we make a giant snowman later?" Ethan asked. "Yes," Chloe agreed. But Sarah noticed how the wind had picked up, how the snow was now falling almost horizontally, how the temperature had plummeted. She grabbed her cell phone and sent a message to Alexander. "It's snowing really hard here. Do you want me to keep Ethan until it calms down?" The answer came back quickly. "Yes, please. I'll wait for the worst to pass. Thanks." Sarah put her phone away. It was fine. Ethan could stay a little longer. By 6 o'clock, the blizzard had gotten significantly worse. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows. The snow was accumulating fast. There must have been about 6 inches on the ground already, and the house started to get cold. Sarah turned the heater up to maximum. The old appliance made a strange noise, shook, but started blowing warm air. It wasn't enough. The cold sliced through the window crack like a knife. Sarah tried to seal it with towels, but the wind was too strong. "Mommy, it's freezing," Chloe complained, rubbing her arms. "I know. Love, I'll get blankets." Sarah brought all the blankets she had and built a kind of nest on the sofa. She put the 3 children there, wrapped up together. "That way you'll stay warm." Hug each other. Ethan sat in the middle, with Mia on one side and Chloe on the other. The 3 snuggled up, sharing warmth. "It's better," Ethan said. Sarah sat next to them, pulling part of the blanket over herself. She rubbed her hands, trying to warm them up. The heater kept making that strange noise. Then, suddenly, it stopped. Silence. Sarah got up quickly and went to the appliance. She pressed the buttons. Nothing, it was dead. No, no, no. She hit it lightly. She unplugged it and plugged it back in. Nothing happened. "Is it broken?" Mia asked softly. Sarah went back to the sofa, trying not to show panic. "It's having a little trouble." "But we'll be fine under the blankets." She grabbed her cell phone. She thought about calling Alexander, but hesitated. He had his own things to deal with. The blizzard was across the entire city. She didn't want to bother him. He already does so much for us, she thought. I can't keep depending on him all the time. She put the phone away. Let's snuggle up and tell stories, okay? The children agreed, snuggling closer. By 7 o'clock, the situation had gotten worse. The temperature inside the house had dropped so low that you could see their breath forming little clouds. The children were shivering even under all the blankets. And then Sarah heard it plink, plink, plink. The leak had returned, stronger than before. She went to the bathroom. The bucket that had been empty was now filling up quickly. The stain on the ceiling was wet, dripping in multiple spots. The snow must be melting with the little heat that rises, and leaking. She grabbed more buckets, spread them around the bathroom, but she knew it was only a temporary fix. She returned to the living room. The walls were icy to the touch. The water damage in the kitchen seemed to have worsened. The stain was bigger, darker, and the floor near the window groaned every time she stepped on it. With the extreme cold and humidity, the wood was weaker. She went back to the sofa and hugged the 3 children. She tried to give them warmth, but she was freezing too. Mummy, when will it get better? Chloe asked, voice trembling. Soon, my love, soon. But she didn't know if it was true. At 8 o'clock, Sarah finally picked up her cell phone. She tried to call Alexander. It didn't connect. She tried again. Nothing. The blizzard must have knocked out a tower. She sent a text message. Alexander, things are getting rough here. Heater broke. It's really cold. Ethan's fine, but I'm worried. The message wasn't delivered. It stayed with a circle spinning forever. Sarah felt panic rising. She was alone, with 3 children in a freezing house, in the middle of a blizzard. What do I do? She looked at the children. Ethan's lips were slightly blue. The twins were shivering constantly. She grabbed more blankets from the closet. She layered them over the children. She pressed the 3 of them against her body, desperately trying to warm them up. We'll be okay, she whispered, more to herself than to them. Dan, we'll be okay. But the house groaned around them. The wind howled. The leak dripped faster and faster, and it was so cold. On the other side of town, Alexander was getting increasingly worried. He had sent 3 messages to Sarah, none delivered. He had called 5 times, no connection. He looked out the window. The blizzard was terrible. The streets were deserted, covered in snow. She must be fine, he tried to convince himself. It's just a blizzard. It happens every year. But he couldn't calm down. He thought about the house, the water damage, the weak heater, the problems he had seen. He thought about Ethan there, about Mia and Chloe, about Sarah trying to protect the 3 of them alone. And something inside him surged, an instinct that told him something was wrong, very wrong. He grabbed his thickest coat, gloves and hat. Where are you going? The housekeeper asked worriedly. To get my son. But the blizzard. I know, but I have to go. He got into the SUV. The engine roared loudly, at least that worked in the extreme cold. He drove slowly through the covered streets. Visibility was awful. It took him twice as long as normal. But he kept going, because something inside him screamed that he needed to get to that house. Now. When Alexander finally arrived, it was almost 9 at night. The street was unrecognizable under the snow. The houses were dark, many without power. Sarah's house was also in darkness. Power outage, he realized. He got out of the SUV and sank into the snow up to his knee. He walked with difficulty to the door. He knocked hard. Sarah, it's me. He heard movement inside, quick footsteps. The door opened. Sarah was pale, trembling violently. Her lips were purple. Alexander. He quickly stepped inside, closing the door against the wind, and he saw it. The 3 children huddled on the sofa, shivering under mountains of blankets. All their lips were blue, their faces very pale, the bucket in the corner dripping frantically. The water damage stain on the wall was huge, and the cold, a cold that cut to the bone. Alexander, the heater broke, Sarah said, her voice trembling as much as her body. And I couldn't call you, and the house is... You can't stay here. His voice was firm, leaving no room for argument. But it's dangerous. Alexander looked around at the extreme cold, at the shivering children. You'll freeze if you stay here all night. You need to leave. Now, Alexander, I have nowhere to... You're coming to my house. Sarah blinked. What? My house. I have space. Working heat. Safety. He walked to the sofa and picked up Ethan, blankets and all. Let's go. Now. Alexander, I can't... Yes, you can. He looked at her intensely. Sarah, look at these children. Their lips are blue. You won't survive the night here in this cold. The words landed like stones. Sarah looked at her daughters, at their blue lips, at their trembling bodies, and she knew he was right. All right, she whispered. All right. Alexander acted fast. He put Ethan in the SUV with the heater on maximum. He returned and carried Mia, then Chloe. He put the 3 children together in the back seat, wrapped in blankets. Sarah, grab what you need. Clothes, toothbrush, the essentials. Hurry. She gathered a few things in a backpack with trembling hands. What about the house? I'll take care of it. Alexander was already on his cell phone. Mike, it's Alexander. I need you and Kevin here, tomorrow morning. I know it will still be snowing, but when it gets a little better, Sarah's house, it needs reinforcement, better roof covering, sealing the leaks, whatever you can do. That's right. Thanks. He hung up and looked at Sarah. My crew will come do reinforcements when the blizzard calms down. They'll cover the roof properly, seal the water and cold entry points. Alexander, We'll talk later. Get in the car now. Sarah got in, still stunned. Alexander took one last look at the house before getting into the SUV. Alexander's house was in a nicer neighborhood, 20 minutes away. It was large, 2 stories, well built, solid. When they entered, the warmth immediately embraced them. The children sighed with relief. Take them to the guest room, Alexander told the surprised housekeeper. Warm blankets, hot chocolate, whatever they need. Yes, sir. The housekeeper, a kind woman named Martha, gently took the children and led them away. Alexander and Sarah remained in the living room. She stood still processing everything. Thank you. I don't know what... Sit down. Alexander guided her to the sofa near the lit fireplace. You're freezing. He grabbed a blanket and put it over her shoulders. He poured hot chocolate from a thermos. Drink this. Sarah obeyed, her hands shaking so much she almost spilled it. The hot liquid went down, warming her from the inside. Slowly, the trembling stopped. Alexander's phone rang. Mike. Good. Tomorrow when it gets better. Yes, do what you can. Thanks. He hung up. They're going tomorrow. They'll cover the roof with better tarps, seal the leaks. Do whatever they can to make the house habitable again. Sarah looked at him, her eyes filled with tears. Why do you do this? Why do you care so much? Alexander sat beside her. He took a moment to answer. Because when I look at you, I see someone fighting with everything they have. I see a mother who would do anything for her daughters. And He hesitated. I can't just ignore it. But you barely know me. Maybe, but sometimes you know what matters. Their eyes met, and Sarah saw it. She saw something there that made her understand it wasn't just charity. It wasn't just kindness. It was something deeper, something that scared and warmed her at the same time. Thank you, she whispered. For everything. Alexander just nodded. From upstairs, they heard the children's laughter, already warm, already safe, already playing again. They'll stay here for a few days, Alexander said, until the house is safe again. Alexander, I can't accept. You can and you will. His voice was firm but gentle. It's not up for discussion, Sarah. You're staying. I have extra rooms, extra food, and I won't let you go back to a cold house in the middle of a blizzard. Sarah felt the tears finally escape. She had fought alone for so long. She had carried everything on her shoulders. She had pretended everything was fine when it was falling apart. And now, for the first time in years, someone was sharing the burden. Someone was saying, you are not alone. Thank you, she repeated, her voice cracking. A thank you so much. Alexander placed his hand over hers, a simple gesture, but loaded with meaning. Don't worry. We'll take care of everything. And in that moment, Sarah believed him. Outside, the the blizzard continued to rage. But inside that warm, safe house, 4 people who were complete strangers weeks ago were now together, protected, safe, and something between Alexander and Sarah had changed irreversibly. What was gratitude had turned into something more. What was help had become genuine care. And although neither of them was ready to name it, both felt it. That warmth in their chest that didn't come from the fireplace, that feeling that maybe, just maybe, they didn't have to be alone anymore. The blizzard had forced the crisis, but it had also forced the truth, and sometimes it takes a storm to reveal what truly matters. The first few days at Alexander's house were strange for Sarah. The house was too big, too beautiful, too organized. Everything worked, the heat, the hot water, the lights. Nothing leaked, nothing creaked, nothing threatened to fall apart. It was everything her house wasn't, and it made her feel small. Sarah woke up early, even without needing to work. The bakery had given her a few days off because of the blizzard. She went down to the kitchen before everyone else, trying not to make noise, trying not to take up too much space. Martha, the housekeeper, was always there. "Morning, dear. Coffee." "Thank you, but I can make it. It's ready." Martha served it with a smile. "Sit down, relax a little." But Sarah couldn't relax. She felt like she was intruding, like she was being a burden. Alexander noticed. He tried to give her space, not pressure her. He left early for work, came back in the late afternoon. He asked if everything was okay, if they needed anything. "Everything's great," Sarah always replied. "Thank you for everything." But there was a distance there, an awkwardness she couldn't hide. Alexander saw it and respected it. He didn't force conversation, he didn't insist, but he worried. The children, on the other hand, were in paradise. Ethan showed Mia and Chloe every corner of the house, his room full of toys, the game room in the basement, the huge backyard with swings. "Look, there's a giant slide," Ethan shouted on the first day. The twins ran to see, their eyes shining. "It really is huge," Mia shouted. "Can we play?" Chloe asked shyly. "Of course, it's ours now." And they played a lot. Laughter echoed throughout the house, running through the hallways. Shouts of joy in the backyard, building pillow forts in the living room. Sarah watched from afar, sitting in the kitchen with a mug of tea. Martha sat beside her. "It's good to hear children's laughter in here again. Again. This house gets too quiet. Just Mr. Alexander and little Ethan, and the boy is at school a lot." Martha smiled. "Now it's alive." Sarah took a sip of her tea, thoughtful. On the third day, Sarah was in the living room when she saw a scene that froze her. Chloe had tripped while running and fallen. Nothing serious, but she had scraped her knee. Before Sarah could get up, Ethan was already there. "Are you okay, Chloe?" The girl had tears in her eyes, holding her knee. "It hurts." "Wait here. I'll get a Band-Aid." Ethan ran to the bathroom and came back with the box of bandages. He knelt beside Chloe with a doctor's seriousness. "Let me see." He carefully cleaned her knee, slowly applied the Band-Aid. "There, it'll be better now." "Thank you, Ethan," Chloe said softly. "You're welcome. Now you need to rest a little." He helped Chloe sit on the sofa, brought a pillow and put it under her leg. "Tight, that's better." Mia sat on the other side of her sister, holding her hand. Sarah watched everything with a lump in her throat. What a thoughtful boy. What a kind boy. And suddenly she understood where Ethan had learned it. She looked at Alexander, who was standing in the office doorway watching too. Their eyes met. Alexander gave a small smile and went back into the office. Sarah felt something tighten in her chest. Alexander tried to give her space, but it was difficult. He wanted to ask Sarah if she was okay. He wanted to talk. He wanted her to feel at home. But he saw her discomfort. He saw how she shrank back, how she tried to be invisible, so he respected the distance. He worked in the office at night, reviewed projects, took calls, avoided being intrusive. But he heard the children's laughter and smiled. At least they were happy. And that was something. On the fourth night, Sarah couldn't sleep. The guest room was too comfortable, the bed too soft, the silence too complete. She was used to the sound of the leak, to the wind through the window crack, to the creaking of the old floorboards. Here, everything was perfect, and that made her uneasy. At 2 in the morning, she gave up trying to sleep. She got up, put on the robe Martha had lent her, and went downstairs for water. The house was dark and silent. Only one light came from the hallway, from the office. Sarah hesitated. She should go back to bed, not bother him. But something pulled her. She walked slowly to the office. The door was slightly ajar. Alexander was sitting at the desk, leaning over architectural plans. He wore reading glasses that Sarah had never seen on him. He looked tired. She tapped lightly on the door. Alexander looked up, surprised. "Sarah, are you okay?" "Sorry to interrupt. I just came down for water." "You're not interrupting." He took off his glasses and leaned back in his chair. "Can't sleep?" "Not really." "Want to come in? Or would you rather be alone?" Sarah hesitated, but walked in. The office was cozy, shelves full of books, blueprints spread out, a small fireplace lit in the corner. "You work late," she commented. "Sometimes. When I have a lot on my mind. Projects. Always a project." Alexander pointed to the chair across from him. "Sit if you want." Sarah sat down, pulling the robe tighter around her body. They were silent for a moment. It wasn't uncomfortable, but it was charged. "Alexander," Sarah began, then hesitated. "Go on. How do you know so much about houses falling apart?" The question came out more directly than she intended. Alexander blinked, surprised. "What?" "You look at a house and you see everything. Water damage, sagging floors, roof problems." Sarah leaned forward. "It's not just builder knowledge. It's personal. I can feel it." Alexander was quiet. His face grew serious. Sarah realized she had touched on something deep. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have." "No." Alexander held up a hand. "It's not that. It's just, no one has ever asked me that before." "You don't have to answer if you don't want to." Alexander looked at the fireplace. The flames danced, casting shadows on the wall. Then he took a deep breath. "I grew up poor." His voice was soft, heavy. Sarah sat motionless, listening. "Very poor. My mother, my father, and I. We lived in a neighborhood similar to yours. Old house, full of problems." He paused, as if traveling back in time. "My father worked in construction. A laborer, he didn't earn much. My mother did cleaning jobs. We managed as best we could." Sarah felt her heart clench. "The house had water damage. The roof leaked when it rained. In the winter, the cold came in everywhere. My father tried to fix things, but he never had the money to do it properly." Alexander rubbed his face, tired. "I was 10 years old. It was a very harsh winter." "Worse than this one?" Sarah already knew the story wasn't going to end well. "My father was working on a construction site, an old building they were renovating, and there was snow. Lots of snow." His voice trembled slightly. "The structure couldn't handle the weight. It collapsed." Sarah put her hand to her mouth. "Alexander, he died instantly. Along with 3 other workers." Heavy silence filled the office. Later they found out that the structure had been compromised for months, that the owner knew and did nothing because it was too expensive to fix properly. Alexander finally looked at Sarah. His eyes were moist. 4 men died because someone thought cutting costs was worth more than lives." "I'm so sorry," Sarah whispered. "I truly am. My mother never recovered. She worked double shifts to raise me. She died when I was 17, exhaustion, the doctors said. But I know it was sadness." He got up, walked to the window. "I was alone. No money, no family. I worked whatever job I could find, and I swore that one day I would have my own construction company." "And you did." "I did. It took years, a lot of hard work, a lot of sweat, but I built it from the ground up." He turned to face her. "And I swore that I would never, ever let a family suffer because a house wasn't safe." Sarah felt the tears stream down her face. Now everything made sense. Why he had stopped to help. Why he cared so much. Why he looked at that old house and saw more than walls. He saw a family. He saw danger. He saw his own history repeating itself. "That's why you do what you do," she said softly. "It is. Every house I renovate, every family I help, it's like I'm saving my father. Even though I know I can't. Alexander, you're the first person I've told this to." He gave a sad smile. "Besides Ethan, why did you tell me?" Alexander walked back to his chair, sitting down heavily. "Because you genuinely asked. Because you saw past the surface." He looked at her intently. "And because I wanted you to know that I understand. I understand what it's like to live in a house that's falling apart. I understand what it's like to be afraid in the winter. I understand what it's like to try to protect the people you love with the little you have." Sarah couldn't hold back anymore. The tears fell freely. I thought you did it because you have money, because you can." "Rich person's charity. It's not charity." His voice was firm. It never was. "I know that now." They were silent, but it was different. There was no more distance. There was no more awkwardness. There was understanding. Sarah wiped her eyes. "Thank you for telling me. Thank you for asking. Your father would be proud of what you built. Of the man you are." Alexander swallowed hard, emotional. "I hope so." Sarah stood up slowly. "I'll let you work." "Sarah," she stopped at the door. "You're not intruding. You're not a burden. You and the girls are welcome here, for as long as you need." "Really? Really?" Sarah smiled, the first genuine smile since she had arrived. "Thank you, Alexander. For everything, truly." She left, but something had changed. Alexander was no longer the rich man helping the poor woman. He was someone who understood, someone who had been there, someone who fought his own ghosts by saving others. He was real, human, and because of that, even more admirable. Sarah returned to the room but didn't lie down immediately. She stood at the window looking at the snow that was still falling outside. Calmer now. She thought about Alexander's father dying in that collapse. She thought about his mother working until she died of sadness. She thought about the 10-year-old boy who had lost everything and decided to build something from scratch. And for the first time since she had arrived in that house, Sarah didn't feel ashamed. She felt deep gratitude, and something else she still couldn't name, something warm and scary at the same time, something that had to do with the way Alexander looked at her, with the way he respected her space but genuinely cared, with the way he took care of Ethan so the boy would grow up to be kind like him. Sarah rested her forehead on the cold window pane. "Be careful," a voice inside her warned. "Don't get too attached. He's just helping. This will pass." But another, deeper voice whispered differently. "What if it's not just help? What if it's something more?" Sarah shook her head and went to bed. It was too late for those thoughts, but as she closed her eyes, the last thing she thought of was Alexander's face when he talked about his father. The vulnerability there, the strength too, and how for the first time in years she didn't feel alone carrying the weight of the world. Because she had someone next to her who understood, who knew the struggle, and who, for reasons that went beyond money or charity, truly cared. In the office, Alexander continued looking at the plans on the desk without really seeing them. He had told her. After years of keeping that story hidden, he had told Sarah, and he felt relief. As if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. She hadn't looked at him with pity. She had looked at him with understanding. She had seen the real him, not the successful builder, not the man with money, but the boy who had lost his father, the man fighting ghosts, the real person behind the facade. Alexander turned off the office light and went upstairs to his room. He passed the guest room hallway. He saw the light off in Sarah's room and smiled, because something had changed between them that night. The masks had fallen, and what remained was real, true, and much scarier and more beautiful than either of them was prepared to admit. 2 weeks after the blizzard, Alexander's team began the real work on Sarah's house. Mike arrived early with Kevin and 3 other employees. A van loaded with materials parked out front. Lumber, new shingles, paint, pipes, tools. "We're doing it right this time, boss," Mike said on the phone with Alexander. "No patch jobs, full renovation." And that's exactly what they did. First the roof. They removed all the old, cracked shingles, replaced rafters that were rotting, installed new shingles, a waterproof layer, and functioning gutters. Then the plumbing. They traced all the leaks, replaced old pipes, installed new fixtures. The leak that had been dripping for months was permanently fixed. The old heater was removed and replaced with a new efficient model, the kind that warmed the entire house without making strange noises. The windows were properly sealed, the cracks covered, frames replaced where necessary, new glass installed. The living room floor was completely redone. They ripped out the rotten boards, reinforced the structure underneath, and laid down new, sturdy wood. The water damage on the walls was treated. They scraped off all the damaged plaster, waterproofed it, replastered, and painted. The crew worked 10 hours a day for 2 weeks. Alexander stopped by every afternoon to supervise. He checked every detail. Nothing could be left half-finished. "This house is going to last," he told Mike. "It has to last." Sarah and the girls were still at Alexander's house. But after that conversation in the office, the atmosphere had changed. Sarah no longer felt out of place. She helped Martha in the kitchen. She played with the children. She talked with Alexander at dinner. The barriers had fallen. "How's the work on the house coming along?" Sarah would ask every night. "Making good progress." "Just a few more days." "I can't believe you're doing all this. I told you it's not charity." And she knew it now. She knew it was something deeper. The children had become inseparable. Ethan, Mia, and Chloe did everything together. Breakfast, playing, drawing, even bathing. Martha laughed, saying the house seemed to have tripled in size with all the noise. Alexander watched and smiled. His house, which had always seemed big and too empty, was now full. Full of life, full of laughter, full of something he hadn't had in a long time. On the 13th day, Mike called, "It's ready, boss." Alexander felt something tighten in his chest. Relief, yes, but also something strange he couldn't name. Everything. "Are you sure? Everything. New house. You can come see. I'll take Sarah tomorrow." He hung up and stood in the office. The house was ready, which meant Sarah and the girls would be leaving. They would go back to their own place, as it was supposed to be. So why did he feel that tightness in his chest? The next day, Alexander walked into the kitchen, where Sarah was having breakfast with the children. "The house is ready." Sarah froze with her cup in the air. "Ready?" "Completely. Want to go see?" She slowly put the cup down on the table. "Now." "If you want." The twins jumped out of their chairs. "Can we go too?" Mia asked. "Of course," Alexander smiled. "Tom, it's your house." 20 minutes later, they parked out front. Sarah looked out the car window and her eyes widened. The facade still had the nice paint they had done at Christmas, but now it matched the rest. The roof was flawless, new shingles perfectly aligned. The windows shone clean, the frames straight. The garden fence had been repaired. Even the grass, previously covered in snow and weeds, was neatly trimmed. "Oh my God," Sarah whispered. Alexander got out and opened the door for her. The children jumped out of the car, running towards the house. "Slow down," Sarah shouted, but they were already at the door. Alexander took the key from his pocket and unlocked it. The twins ran in and stopped. "To Mommy," Chloe whispered. "Look," Mia finished. Sarah walked in slowly behind them, and she put her hands over her mouth. The house was transformed. The living room floor was new, smooth, without a single creak. The walls were painted a soft cream color, without any stain of water damage. The window was perfectly sealed. They went to the kitchen. The enormous water damage that climbed the wall was completely gone. Everything was clean, new, painted. In the bathroom, no bucket, no plink, plink, plink. The ceiling was perfect. The heater. Alexander pointed to the new appliance in the corner of the room. "This one will heat the whole house. No noise, no problems." Sarah touched the walls as if she couldn't believe they were real. They went to the bedrooms. The beds were made. Martha had come earlier and straightened everything up. Clean clothes in the drawers, new curtains on the windows. Everything was washed and organized, Alexander explained. So you wouldn't have to do anything. Sarah walked through the entire house. She touched every wall, tested every window, stepped on every floorboard, everything solid, everything safe, everything working. And then she stopped in the middle of the living room and started to cry. Not a quiet cry, a deep cry that came from her soul. Sarah. Alexander approached, worried. I don't know how to thank you. The words came out choked with sobs. I can't. You don't need to. Yes, I do. She looked at him with overflowing eyes. You saved us, Alexander. You saved us. Alexander placed his hands on her shoulders, gentle but firm. Seeing our children happy is enough. The way he said our children made Sarah cry even harder. The twins came running and hugged their mother's legs. Don't cry, Mommy. The house is beautiful. Everything's good now. Sarah knelt down and hugged the two of them tightly, laughing and crying at the same time. It is, my loves. Everything's good. Ethan came close to Alexander and pulled on his father's sleeve. Dad, why is Sarah crying if she's happy? Sometimes people cry when they're very happy, champ. Oh, Ethan thought about it. Then it's okay. He got down from his father's arms and went to hug Mia and Chloe too, joining the group hug. Alexander stood watching the four of them, Sarah and the three children hugging, laughing and crying together. And he felt that tightness in his chest again, but this time he recognized what it was. He didn't want them to leave. He had gotten used to the laughter in his house, to the noise, to Sarah's presence in the kitchen every morning, to the conversations at dinner. He had gotten used to something that felt dangerously like a family, but he couldn't say it. Not now. Not yet. The children explored every corner of the renovated house. They ran through the bedrooms, testing how the floor no longer creaked. They opened and closed the windows, amazed at how smoothly they slid. They turned the new heater on and off several times just to see it work. It's like magic, Ethan said. Better than magic, Mia agreed. It's real, Chloe finished seriously. Sarah and Alexander stood on the porch watching the children play inside. I don't know what to say, Sarah said softly. Thank you feels too small. Then don't say it. Alexander leaned against the railing. Just enjoy it. I will. I promise. She hesitated. Are we moving back today? If you want, the house is ready. Sarah looked inside, at the girls running happily. I think so. They deserve to sleep in their own room again. Alexander nodded, but something inside him sank. Of course, that afternoon they moved back. Not that they had brought much, just the backpacks with basic clothes. But Alexander and Ethan helped carry everything. Martha had prepared food and left it in the refrigerator. So, you won't have to cook for the first few days, she explained to Sarah. Martha, you're an angel. Nonsense, dear. When everything was organized, Alexander and Ethan stood at the door. Well, Alexander awkwardly scratched the back of his neck. I guess that's it. It is. Sarah also seemed awkward. Thank you again for everything. You don't need to thank me. Awkward silence. Ethan broke the mood. Can we come back tomorrow to play? Mia and Chloe answered together. Yes, please, Sarah and Alexander laughed. Of course you can, Sarah said. Whenever you want, Alexander finished. More silence. Then Alexander and Ethan finally left. In the car, Ethan asked, Dad, why are you sad? I'm not sad, son. Yes, you are. I can tell. Alexander sighed. I'm just going to miss them in our house. Me too. Ethan looked out the window. The house is quiet again. It is. But we can visit every day, right? We can. Then it's not so bad. Alexander smiled. No, it's not so bad. But it was. A little. And so a new routine began. Alexander stopped by Sarah's house almost every day. Sometimes he brought Ethan to play with the girls. Sometimes he went alone with the excuse of checking if everything was working properly. Just checking the heater, he would say. It's been working fine for a week, Sarah would reply, smiling. Can't hurt to check. They talked more, about everything and nothing. Work, children, plans, memories. They walked together when the children played in the backyard. "It's colder today," Sarah would comment. "It is, but the house can handle it now." "It can," she smiled. "Not a single draft gets in, as it should be." They laughed at simple things, at Ethan's bad jokes, at how the twins spoke at exactly the same time, at how Martha always sent extra food just in case. A lightness began to exist between them, but also something heavier, something unsaid. Alexander would hold Sarah's hand to help her step down a porch step and take an extra second to let go. Sarah would lean against his arm when they laughed about something and leave her hand there longer than necessary. Their gazes lingered. Their smiles meant more. Goodbyes got harder. "Well, see you tomorrow," Alexander would say at the door. "See you tomorrow," Sarah would reply. Neither of them moved immediately. Then Alexander would wave and leave, and Sarah would stand at the door watching him go, with that clenching in her chest that she couldn't explain. One afternoon, Alexander arrived without Ethan. "He's at a friend's house," he explained. "I thought I'd stop by anyway, just to, you know." Sarah smiled. "To see if the heater is still working." "Exactly," Alexander laughed. The twins were playing in the bedroom. Sarah served coffee and they sat in the living room. "This house is so different," she commented. Sometimes I wake up at night and I don't recognize it. Everything's so silent, so warm." "Is that good?" "It's great. But strange." She took a sip. "I got used to the sound of the leak, to the cold coming in through the window. It was bad, but it was familiar. I understand. Now everything is perfect, and I keep thinking." "About what?" Sarah hesitated. "Shais, if I deserve this?" Alexander put his cup down on the table and leaned forward. "Sarah, look at me." She looked. "You deserve this and much more, you and the girls. But I didn't do anything to—" "You fought, every day. You worked until exhaustion. You raised 2 beautiful girls alone. You never gave up." He held her hand. "If anyone deserves a safe home, it's you." Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away. "Thank you for believing that. Always." His hand still held hers. Neither of them let go. They stayed like that for a moment, hands intertwined, gazes connected, something pulsing between them. Then Mia shouted from the bedroom, "Mommy!" "Chloe took my doll." "I didn't take it. She dropped it." The moment broke. Sarah laughed and let go of his hand. "I'd better go sort that out before it turns into a war." "Go ahead." She stood up, but looked back before leaving the room. "Stay for dinner?" Alexander smiled. "I'd love to." Days turned into weeks. Alexander and Ethan were there almost every day. Dinners became routine, playing in the backyard too, watching movies together on the living room sofa. The children no longer asked if they could see each other. They simply expected it to happen, and it always did. Sarah realized how much more she smiled, how much more she laughed, how the weight on her shoulders had gotten lighter. Alexander realized how empty his house seemed when he returned, how eagerly he awaited the next visit, how he thought of Sarah before falling asleep. Neither of them talked about the obvious, about how this had stopped being just friendship a long time ago, about how their looks meant more than they should, about how their hands sought each other without meaning to, about how the idea of not seeing the other clenched their chest. There was affection there, obvious, growing, but neither of them had the courage to name it. They were afraid to ruin it, afraid to lose what they had built. So they continued like this, in that delicate dance of almost out of maybe, of not yet. But they both knew. Deep down, they both knew. That what they had was not just gratitude. It wasn't just friendship. It was something deeper, something that grew silently, like roots deepening in the earth, slow but inevitable, real and scary, and every day more impossible to ignore. March arrived, bringing the thaw. The snow slowly melted, revealing green grass underneath. Trees began to bud. The air was still cool, but there was a promise in it. Spring was coming, and with it, a routine that had become so natural that no one questioned it anymore. Alexander and Ethan showed up at Sarah's house almost every day, sometimes for dinner, sometimes just to hang out. sometimes for no reason other than wanting to be there. And Sarah waited for them. She prepared food for 4. She saved a spot on the sofa. She smiled when she heard the SUV park out front. "They're here!" Mia and Chloe shouted, running to the door. Ethan jumped out of the car and the 3 hugged as if they hadn't seen each other in weeks, when they had actually seen each other the day before. "Let's play in the yard. Let's build a treehouse. Let's draw." And they disappeared together, an inseparable trio. Alexander and Sarah stood watching from the porch, always with smiles on their faces. "They're joined at the hip," Sarah commented. "Oh, they really are. I think Ethan spends more time here than at his own house. He loves being here." Alexander looked at her. "It's not just because of the girls." "It's not." "No." Their eyes met. Something passed between them. Something warm, something inevitable. Sarah looked away first, feeling her cheeks flush. "I'll make coffee." But Alexander had seen it. He had seen the blush. He had seen what that look meant, and he felt his heart speed up. One Saturday afternoon, they decided to go to the park. The children ran ahead, shouting and laughing. Alexander and Sarah walked behind, side by side. "Watch out for the mud," Sarah shouted. Too late. Ethan stepped in a puddle, and water splashed onto the twins. The 3 stopped, looked at each other, and then started laughing. "They're hopeless." Alexander laughed too. "Absolutely." They reached the park and the children ran to the swings. Alexander pushed Ethan, Sarah pushed Mia and Chloe, one on each swing. "Higher, Dad." "Higher, Mum." And they pushed higher, laughing at the children's excited giggles. Then they went to the slide, to the seesaw, to the sandbox where they built a huge crooked castle. Alexander and Sarah sat on a nearby bench, watching. "They're happy together," Sarah said softly. "They are. I've never seen the girls so carefree, so light-hearted. Ethan too, since he met you all, he's different." "Different how?" "Happier. More complete." Alexander hesitated, like he found something that was missing. Sarah looked at him. "I know what you mean." Their eyes met again. This time neither looked away. "Sarah, Alexander." They spoke at the same time and laughed, breaking the tension, but their hands were on the bench very close. Alexander's moved slightly. Sarah's did too. Their fingers almost touched, almost. Then Chloe shouted, "Look at the castle, it's ready." And the moment passed, but something lingered in the air, something that said the almosts couldn't last forever. That night, after the children were asleep, Alexander and Sarah were in the living room. He should have left an hour ago, but he couldn't. "There more coffee?" Sarah offered. "I've had 3 cups already." "Tea then." "Sarah," Alexander laughed, "you don't need to feed me." "I know, but I like to." She sat down next to him on the sofa, closer than necessary. Alexander noticed. Sarah did too. Neither of them moved away. "Alexander," Sarah started, then hesitated. Say it. Have you thought about the future?" The question caught him by surprise. "The future how?" "Your future, Ethan's, where you're going, what you're doing." Alexander thought before answering. "I think about it, all the time. And... He looked at her. "Lately, when I think about the future, you're in it." Sarah stopped breathing for a second. "Just, you and the girls, I can't imagine it differently anymore." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. "Me too," Sarah whispered. "When I think about tomorrow, next week, a year from now, you're there. Always." Alexander turned fully towards her. "Sarah, you don't need to say anything." She placed her hand over his. "I just wanted you to know." He intertwined his fingers with hers, a simple gesture that meant everything. "I know, and you know too." "I do." They stayed like that, hands intertwined, gazes connected, breaths synchronized. Alexander raised his free hand and touched her face gently. His thumb softly stroked her cheek. Sarah closed her eyes at the touch, slightly leaning her face against his hand. "This is scary," she whispered. "Very. But it's good. Very good." Alexander leaned in, slowly. Sarah did the same. Their faces moved closer. Their breaths mingled, and then, "Mommy." They quickly pulled apart. Chloe was at the bedroom door, rubbing her eyes. "What is it, love?" Sarah stood up. "I had a bad dream." "Come here." Sarah picked the girl up and returned to the sofa. Chloe snuggled against her mother. Alexander smiled at the scene. "Do you want me to leave?" he offered. "No," Chloe said sleepily. "Stay, Uncle Alexander. Uncle Alexander now." He chuckled softly. "Yeah, you're like family." The child's words landed like a simple, absolute truth. Alexander looked at Sarah. She looked back. Family. They already were, without needing to declare it, without needing to define it. They simply were. Chloe fell asleep in Sarah's lap. Alexander carefully carried her back to the bedroom, tucked her in, and tiptoed out. In the living room, Sarah was leaning against the wall, arms crossed, smiling. "Thank you." "For what?" "For staying. For not leaving when you could have. For being here." Alexander walked closer. "I can't leave. Not really." "I know." They stood there, too close to be just friends, still too far to be declared. "Alexander." "I know," he gently interrupted. "You don't need to explain, I understand." "You do." "I understand that this is new for us, that it's scary, that we have children to think about." He touched her face again. "And I understand that there's no need to rush." "There isn't." "No, because we already know, don't we?" Sarah smiled, her eyes shining. "We do, we already know." Alexander kissed her forehead, a lingering kiss weight full of promise. "See you tomorrow. See you tomorrow." He walked to the door. He stopped, looked back one last time. Sarah was there, leaning against the wall, smiling. "Alexander." "Yes, thank you for everything." "You don't need to thank me. We're family now." And with those words, he left. That night, Sarah lay in bed thinking about everything that had happened since that Christmas Eve. A man had stopped to help. A house had been renovated. 2 lonely families had found each other. And without realizing it, without planning it, they had become one. Not in the traditional way. Not with declarations or ceremonies, but in the real way. With dinners together, with shared laughter, with children playing, with looks that said everything, with hands that sought each other, with love being born slowly, as it must be born, in routine, in simplicity, in truth. Sarah closed her eyes, smiling, because she knew that tomorrow Alexander and Ethan would show up again, that they would have dinner together again, that the children would play again, that their gazes would meet again, and that, day after day, that family that was being born without noticing would solidify, not quickly but certainly. On the other side of town, Alexander was also lying down, thinking about how he had turned onto that street by accident, about how Ethan had asked to help, about how Sarah had looked at him with gratitude that turned into friendship, that turned into something more, about how, without looking, he had found what was missing, a family, not the one he had lost in the divorce, but a new one, one that he chose every day, one that chose him back. Alexander turned onto his side and closed his eyes. Tomorrow he would wake up, get Ethan and drive to that house. He would knock on the door and Sarah would open it, smiling. The children would shout and run. They would have dinner together, laugh together, exist together. As always, as it would be from now on. Because some things don't need to be said to be true. Some things simply are. And this family slowly being born, this silent love growing, this life naturally intertwining, was the truest thing he had felt in years. Outside, spring was approaching, the ice was melting, flowers were beginning to bloom, and 2 families that winter had united were preparing to blossom together, without rush, without fear, just letting it happen, as it was meant to be, as it should have been all along. A family born from accident, from kindness, from the courage to open one's heart, and from the love that grows slowly, the kind that lasts forever. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.